Welcome back. Welcome back, everyone, from our lunch break today. I cannot tell you how excited I am to talk to this incredible panel that we have this afternoon. So, shaking it up, having a little bit of fun. For those of you that don't know me, I am Heather Blevins, and in my day job at State Farm, I serve as a senior project coordinator in our PNC underwriting operational strategy area, which is just a fancy title, which means that I have learned how to nail jello to a wall and keep projects between the ditches. I do serve in the Central Illinois CPCU chapter as their immediate past president. And on that note, I'd just like to give a massive shout out to all of the incredible volunteers in our chapter for doing all that you can with what you have, where you are every single day. This is National Volunteer Appreciation Week, and special thanks again to this amazing committee of volunteers from your spring symposium group. You all have once again absolutely knocked it out of the park here. And just as one more plug, because I can't be a cheerleader for volunteerism enough, if you are interested at all in volunteering either with our local chapter or the International CPCU Society, it's recruitment time. We all need volunteers all the time for our succession planning. So I have, again, some amazing people here today to talk to you about what we have titled Believe, Talent Recruiting and Retention. And I'm going to start this off right away with questions for this panel. I am definitely highlight all those people on the screen for me, Sandy. I'd love to see all their faces. And Kelsey, is Kelsey there yet? There she is. All right, we have Kelsey Hayes. Kelsey, I'm going to throw my very first question to you, and then we're going to kind of go round robin around the room as I introduce all of you as panelists. Kelsey, I'd like you to tell everybody here today one thing that you're passionate about and one thing that you're grateful for today.
So right now with where I'm at in my career, I'm really passionate about career development and just doing everything I can to learn more about insurance and get more involved within the industry. And I'm grateful to have this opportunity to come and speak to everyone as new talent.
Awesome. Well, a little bit more about Kelsey. She is an international graduate trainee for Munich Re, one of the top providers in reinsurance, primary insurance, and insurance-related risk solutions around the world. She grew up in the Chicago suburbs, and she attended, guess what, Illinois State University, where she earned her bachelor's degree in finance and risk management in insurance just last year. Kelsey, everybody, Kelsey is the next generation of insurance talent, and that's why we have her here today. While studying at Illinois State University, she was offered an amazing opportunity to participate as an intern with Munich Re, where she started working with the facultative property underwriting team, say that 4 times really fast, during the summer of 2021. Before graduating and transitioning into her current role, she worked with Munich Re's corporate property team. Now, outside of all that cool insurance stuff that Kelsey is doing right now, she's a member of NAAIA, and she's an avid golfer. So I envy her for that, because I could not hit a golf ball to go anywhere in any direction correctly at any point in my life. When she is not on the golf course, Kelsey's in the process of studying for her CPCU designation, and she's volunteering a lot for local youth organizations. So my next panelist, Tony, I want you to tell me one thing that you're passionate about and one thing that you're grateful for today.
I am ridiculously passionate about insurance and insurance careers and travel. And I am grateful that I was able to get into a hotel early and get a decent spot to do this webinar. And I'm very grateful for virtual Zoom glasses, because they're doing something very important. They're keeping you from noticing how badly I need a haircut. So yeah, very thankful for those today.
Well, that's awesome. Tony kind of inspired me today, and I will say I am grateful for Tony's outgoing nature because he inspired me to put this crazy hat on in Zoom today and have a little fun with our panel. A little bit more about Tony. Tony is an insurance evangelist. If you don't know Tony, you need to know Tony because he is out there and everywhere being that voice for insurance and insurance talent in the next generation. He recently brought his passion for supporting the insurance industry with great talent to Goodwin Recruiting as a recruiting partner. He's been active in the industry since 2009, and he has a slew of all of those letters and alphabet soup after his name, most importantly, that CPCU designation. Having worked in claims and underwriting and finance and sales at 4 different insurance carriers, 6 cities and 5 states, he has gained a very broad understanding on the insurance industry. Tony has been involved in the industry's effort. He is incredibly passionate again about recruiting and retaining millennials and has become a well-known speaker, blogger, and best-selling author on the topic. He's also incredibly passionate about the insurtech sector and runs Profiles in Risk. That's out there on YouTube. There are a ton of amazing videos that you can watch Tony interviewing people all over the industry. This is the largest podcast that is available in the insurtech space and a YouTube channel dedicated to exploring insurtech organizations through unscripted interviews with members of their leadership team. On top of these endeavors, Tony is really active in the industry through his associations with the International CPCU Society. Tony has received both his bachelor's degree and MBA from Iowa State University. So go Midwest whenever you see Tony. Now, Meg, I know I've got you there at the last and bringing it up, but just tell us today one thing that you're passionate about and one thing that you're grateful for.
Ooh, so happy to be here, by the way. Thanks for the invite. Passionate about helping people to really see and understand that they can find a place in our industry where they don't have to compromise who they are and what makes them great, but that they can really shine and really thrive in a role. And it may not be the one that they have currently, but there is a fit for us out there in this industry. And my own winding path to get here is the thing that I'm grateful for. My insurance career started in Bloomington, Illinois. I'm a proud graduate of Illinois Wesleyan. Thanks for letting me come hang out ISU. And I started as an intern, and to be here 24 years later, doing what I'm doing right now is something I'm exceptionally grateful for. So thank you.
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Meg and just tell you that I'm really grateful to have Meg as a friend. She is such an incredible inspiration to all of us. But a believer that there's a story within every story. Meg's career journey, she'll tell you, took a sharp turn, left turn in 2017 when she exchanged her corporate job for a year-long sabbatical. The following year, she launched Adjunct Advisors with the simple belief that people that have made a career in insurance deserve a better experience out of that career. Meg now leverages more than 20 years of industry experience and studies in the social sciences to change the way we interact with insurance. Her path has not been traditional, but her ability to make insurance and entrepreneurship approachable and relatable with humility and humor and an absolute heart for absolutely everything that is the insurance industry, those are her gifts. So again, thank you all for being with us here today. We have a lot to talk about, and I know the title of this particular panel, Believe, Talent Recruiting and Retention. I went off on a wild tear and I said, let's relate this to Ted Lasso, the hit Apple TV show, because to me, Ted Lasso absolutely epitomizes everything that we need in leaders in the insurance industry today. We need people who believe in our industry. But we have a lot of challenges ahead of us as far as it comes to recruiting and retention of talent in the insurance industry. There's a lot of reasons why that we have a talent crisis right now in the insurance industry. Some of those most common reasons that I was looking up and Googling a little bit earlier today are attributed to our aging workforce, the competition in a globalized world, and the fact that it's really tough to retain new talent out there. So I'm going to throw this first question to Tony, and then we'll kind of go around the room. In your experience, what are the biggest challenges facing the insurance industry today? I just listed a few, but what are those challenges that you're seeing directly on the front lines, Tony, in recruitment and retention of talent?
So we still have not figured out how to get the kids interested in insurance early on. There's many efforts, right? The support your local Gamma chapter, speak at your local high school, get people interested in insurance. There's multiple efforts to do that kind of thing, but we continue to be a people fall into insurance by accident for the most part type of career. But it is an amazing career, both carrier side and broker side, and now insurtech side. I'm okay with the fact that we haven't figured that out. The one that really hurts is how many entry-level people we lose. We do get them, especially carrier side. We get them into call centers. We get them into small agencies. We get them into entry-level claims, especially, and then we lose so many of them instead of finding them the right seat on the bus or the right bus and the right seat on the bus. And I think that's the biggest thing we could do is each of us identify the people in your company that are very entry level, that haven't found the rest of the insurance careers within your company, and point them in the right direction. Help them find something that might be a better fit. If we all did that, we wouldn't have a talent crisis at all.
Really wise words there, Tony. Kelsey, I would love to get your perspective on this as somebody who's newer to our industry. What do you feel like are the biggest challenges that are facing us with recruitment and retention?
I think one of the biggest challenges that I've had to face is just representation. When I started looking for companies where I could see myself, I looked into a few of them, and it's like I can't see myself here in the future. I don't see any initiatives that are in place to bring in more diverse talent at that. So I know for me and for people who look like me as well, we've had conversations. That's a big issue for us.
Yeah, that is it's really great insight there, Kelsey. I know we all are definitely looking for where are we represented, and how is someone like us showing up in the insurance industry. Meg, I would love to hear your perspective as somebody who talks with a lot of agents. And what do you feel like are the biggest challenges out there?
Yeah, I think I'm going to deliver just a little bit of tough love to those of us that are already here. And I think the hardest work that needs to be done is within ourselves. There's an expectation when young people join our industry that they conform and they adapt the way we think and the way we behave. And Tony alluded to some of the entry-level positions in our business. They're some of the absolute hardest, most grindiest, most uncomfortable. They're gross. Many of these positions are gross. And it's no wonder people don't want to put their head down and do them for the first 5 years to get them to the next level. And that's on us. So we've got to really listen to the talent that's coming in the door. They don't think the way that someone who's been here for 20 years thinks. They don't prioritize the same things that we might prioritize. They're not motivated by the same things. And so I think the hardest work to do is on ourselves. And really, when we say meeting people where they are, it's really understanding what's motivating someone and how can we meet them there. So lots of layers to this, Heather, for sure.
Meg, you are thoroughly right. At our entry level, we're an industry that has fantastic careers and crappy entry level jobs, and that's gotten worse in the last 20 years compared to before I worked in the industry, based on the conversations that I've had with people who have been here forever. So we do need to improve the entry level jobs, but the other side of that coin, what I've seen is people can survive a crappy job for 2 or 3 years if they have a long-term vision, if they know where they're going and if they know how to get there. As an industry, we're really bad at helping them know that.
Yeah,
that's the very reason that I started Insurance Nerds. But I've seen it work all over and over again. In my world, I call that the story of Eric Kropp, which is somebody that I recruited into the industry into a really crappy entry-level job. But because he had found insurance nerds and this whole ecosystem of content and advice, I had to talk him off the ledge a couple of times, especially in the first year, which was in a billing call center at a great company, but a really crappy job. But he had a plan. He knew how to get there. So from there, he managed to get into an underwriting training program, and he's now a middle market underwriter with Travelers. We're not losing him, and he has a CPCU now. We're not losing him anymore, right? At this point, like, he's going to stay and he's going to grow here. But getting him through that first piece requires both improving those entry-level jobs and making sure that they have a map for the future, a map customized to them also.
All right. I love what all of you have said, because it's going to take us in another direction, actually, because what you're asking all of us as individuals who've been around the insurance industry for a while is to start being comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? This is a challenge for us, a major challenge, because of the fact that we have, what they call the silver tsunami. We have all those impacts from the Great Resignation as well. And we are like reeling from the impacts of that, trying to bring new talent into the industry. So what I want all of you to do here for me, if you can quickly, and we'll start with you, Meg, since you brought the topic up. Tell us one thing that you think every single person on this call and in this meeting today could do to be a champion for how we can keep the next generation in insurance.
Yeah. We do a lot of talking in our business, and we don't always follow it up with action. And so I'm a coach. That's part of what I do. I'm a huge believer in accountability, and whether it's accountability you set with yourself or someone else or those on your team or your leader, depending on where you fit inside your organization, letting someone know that you're on a bigger journey and that you could use some help and support is really powerful. So if there's an idea that resonates, this is a bit of a call to action, but if there's an idea that resonates in this conversation, just in the next hour, jot it down and take it back to another human and ask for some support in order to meet that. There is, I don't want to be pie in the sky. We don't change in many cases unless we're forced to change. And so we can have really good intentions, but really good intentions that are not followed by action don't really mean much. And they cause a lot of skepticism and frustration. And when we talk about turnover and talent walking out the door, that's a big part of it, is hearing one thing and seeing another. And so that consistency is really, really key.
Kelsey talked about DEI at the very beginning, and DEI is absolutely crucial. And there are many organizations that are absolutely fantastic in educating the industry on DEI, but it takes more than that. It takes holding the industry's feet to the fire, right? And thanks to Meg's podcast, I heard Elisa Stamp's story, which led to the founding of Insure Equality. I'm now on the board of Insure Equality, full disclosure. But basically, what I really love about them is that they're not just educating. They have a tool to collect stories and to collect data from insurance employees that can then be aggregated into something like a Glassdoor for DEI, right? So we can actually go to the companies with data in hand. This is what your employees are saying when it comes to how it feels in the company. I think that holding their feet to the fire, that holding them accountable, is the only way that we're finally gonna get to where we need to be on the DEI space.
Kelsey, anything you have to add to that?
Yeah, I think one thing that helps me, and I know would help other young people coming into this industry, is if we had more in-person engagement. As far as even coming into the office, I didn't realize how much weight that held. I thought that everyone would love this hybrid work way and everything would work out fine, but I'm on the underwriting track for my company. So next year I'll be an underwriter, and I'm trying to develop this underwriting style. And it's only so much that I can do through Teams. It's really beneficial to have an actual person there holding my hand, showing me, looking at the screen, showing me how to do it, taking me to these marketing events. it means more than I think senior level folks within the industry understand.
That's good to know. And I would say I was almost surprised by your answer there, Kelsey. I've heard kind of rumblings, especially from the next generation that's coming into insurance, like you really do crave being around that environment where you can grow and learn from people face to face. So that I know is a huge challenge to the industry as a whole, just because we've moved into this model that is now more remote than it is in the office, depending on who you work for and what carrier you might be involved in or where you might be in the space. So it's good to know that you do want that. And we all have a challenge on us to make sure that we are open, welcome, and inviting to you for all the questions that you have when you come in the door. I think that's important for us. And that's my one takeaway. Always be the person in the room who's going to be teachable by everyone who's around you, because I can tell you the next generation coming into insurance is going to knock all of our socks off when it comes to their capabilities. So, well, the next question that I have, and I'm going to throw this to Tony first, our insurance industry hiring absolutely remains robust. All right, like we're hiring like crazy right now, right? But securing and retaining new talent, particularly among those younger workers who do tend to job hop a little bit. Tony, you're like a prime example of that, right? So they usually job hop about every 12 to 18 months. And that is a top concern for companies. Why? Because time in the job is about experience and knowledge and capabilities increasing, right? So what recommendations do you have for those working in the industry or for organizations to be able to combat, or maybe even just embrace, like we should just suck it up and deal here, right? With that potential job hopping atmosphere that we're facing with this next generation of insurance talent.
It's very tricky. It's very tricky. So I have come to believe that career growth within insurance is a three-legged stool. So one leg is education, and as everybody knows, I'm an education fanatic and CPCU fanatic especially, and because education you can get fairly quickly, right? The second leg is experience, and experience only comes with time, and the third leg is networking. So my favorite strategy when it comes to career advice is education quickly to get to the right place where you can get some good tenure, because yes, it takes a few years to become a solid underwriter, right? I myself have 3 years of underwriting experience, 1 in small commercial, 2 in middle market. I'm no expert in underwriting. I know enough to be dangerous, basically. But then I went in a different direction. But basically, it's about the balance. Craig was saying how some companies are requiring 2 years in the same job before applying for a different role. If that role is, a really meaty role like commercial lines underwriting, might be fine. If you're requiring those 2 years in the claims call center, in the customer service call center, forget it, right? People have basically, once the person is no longer learning and no longer growing in their day-to-day, they're looking for their next opportunity. If we can keep them learning and growing and feeling that growth, giving them small promotions, right, making that growth visible, then it's a little easier to keep them around for longer, basically. And I want to address Kelsey's comment on in person. That part is super tricky. On one hand, yes, in person is usually beneficial for things like training, mentoring, strategic work, that kind of thing. Absolutely. So we want the right people in the office for the new generation to learn from. But at the same time, if you're forcing people into the office just to do their day job, right? If you're forcing people into the office to sit on Zoom calls or to do heads down day job work, then nobody's gaining from that. You're only punishing them, basically, right? So that balance, or how do we get the right people in the office so that the new generation can learn, but then give the new generation the freedom to be in the office when it makes sense for them to be in the office, and not just to do the day job kind of thing.
So what I hear you saying there, Tony, is that we do need to be incredibly intentional about those in-office interactions. And we say those words a lot, you know. So Kelsey, I'm going to throw this to you because you did bring up this particular topic. What does it really mean to be intentional about the time that you spend with people in the office? What do you think that means?
That's a great question, Heather. I think when it comes to being intentional in the office, it's just being there for a purpose. I know that there are certain groups within my company who have these core days, and I make sure to always come in on their core days because I see the way they communicate with one another. They'll just leave the office door open and shout down like, I love that atmosphere. That's what I wanted entering this industry. So aside from that, I think it's also making sure that I feel comfortable enough knowing that eventually I'll be the older one and I need to train someone else. So if I know how to engage with them in person, not just through a screen, that's an important skill set to have. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Meg, I'm going to go back to that other question that I had about like the potential.
Which direction do you want to go, Heather?
Yeah,
there's so much here.
Job hopping atmosphere. Like, how do you think we need to address this?
Yeah. So I'm a believer that we get some advice in our lives and our careers that's really good. And then I think we get some advice that maybe misses the mark and maybe doesn't stand the test of time. And the concept of paying your dues is one of the things that's like nails on a chalkboard for me. I've been in those positions where you're underwriter 1 and you want to be underwriter 2. And the only difference between 1 and 2 is a little bit more time at the underwriting desk. And it isn't necessarily because you've learned more or you've underwritten more accounts or bigger accounts or different accounts. It's literally because your butt has been in a seat for a year or 2 longer. And I know that feeling. I think when we're talking about moving into different roles and assuming new functions, like Tony alluded to, the idea of actually having a career path, I didn't have one. I had no idea when I started in the business what the future would hold. It was literally one opportunity to the next. And I think the generation coming in is really looking at their career holistically, but also that they might have 4 or 5 careers, not just 4 or 5 jobs, but 4 or 5 completely different, related or unrelated experiences professionally. And some of them overlapping, some of them in a gig format, some of them part-time contract, because they're wanting to do work that has purpose and meaning, and they're not wrong for that. We do have meaning and purpose in the insurance industry, but it can be hard sometimes to connect the dots on the spreadsheet and the conference calls to the purpose and the meaning. And so I don't have the magic formula. I don't have the magic formula for anything, but I think it's really understanding, do we have an employee who's being impatient? Or is there genuinely a reason to keep them in the position that they're in for a little bit longer? And I see part of the work that I've been doing over the last year, my business has evolved and continues to evolve, but I've been coaching underwriters now, which I never thought the day would come. As an underwriter at heart, I just never thought that a company would invest in this way. But fortunately, we're seeing that's adding to the employee experience overall, is having someone that you can talk to and you can bounce these. You can't always sit down with your boss and say, hey, I'm ready to move on, because that might tell your boss that you're disengaged and you're not committed and you're not a team player. But you can certainly sit and talk to somebody else who's a little further ahead on their own career path about that. So mentorship is key. I mean, Heather, there's a million different directions that that we can go with this. But back to my original thought, this idea that paying your dues, I think we miss the mark in our business. I want to see underwriters turn into agents. I want to see agents become claims adjusters. I want claims adjusters to become loss control reps. I think that's how you keep one single person engaged in our industry for an entire career. Yeah, thanks, Tony, for that.
I would also like to add to Tony and Meg's point about having a career path. When I first started, I'm in a trainee program where I rotate within the company, so my path is kind of set. But like Meg was saying, mentors are key. I have a mentor for everything, a business mentor, a trainee mentor who's graduated from the program. It's really important to have those key people with you on the journey.
My former company, and the one that kept me around for the longest, or that I stayed with the longest, Jacobson. One thing they did really well, and this is a company of 100 people. The one thing they did really, really well, they have a separate dual-sided performance management program, basically. So you have a review that is the performance, and you have a whole separate one that is where do you want to go. So basically that allows you to have the conversation with your manager on and be honest on where you want to go, so that they can put you on the right projects, invest in you in the right way, and keep from losing you. So I think it works really well for both sides.
Yeah. I don't think I can praise all of you enough for what you're saying here right now, because this is such an incredibly important topic. And it's incredibly important to me personally, because as someone who's been around the industry now for 19 years, I have continuously reinvented myself because of a variety of reasons in the industry. And no one has ever told me that I had a distinct or clear career path to go to another location. And you often feel a little lost in advocating for yourself to say, hey, I'm in this area of the company, but I'd really, really love to explore and try to get to this place in the company. And those mentors that you talk about, Kelsey, man, do they just inject like a shot of adrenaline in you. But what I have learned, I would say over time, is that being an advocate for yourself is incredibly important. And I've also learned that if you don't ask the question, you will never, ever, ever get the answer that you want to get. So don't ever be afraid to ask that question of, you know what, I've started down this path in underwriting, and I really think that I want to go explore a claims career. What would it take for me to do that? And how do I do that? How can I be the best and most marketable candidate to make it to a different place in an organization? My next question that I want to throw out to, let's go to Meg first with this one, since she just wrapped us up with a bow there. But
Yeah.
how can insurance companies and agencies and others in the industry, and this is going to be the challenge point for all of you on the call here right now too as well, how can we ensure that we are creating a welcoming and inclusive workplace for all employees, absolutely regardless of their backgrounds?
Ooh, how direct do I want to be? How edited do I want to go with this? I think we have to remember that the industry is evolving, and in many ways, the industry was established for certain people to find success. And I'll let you kind of fill in the blanks there. I've felt struggles as a woman, certainly in the industry, and at times that I was fighting uphill battles, I was swimming upstream, I was sitting at tables that, seats were not present for me. And I have worked, to your point, Heather, in taking leadership of our own career journey. I've worked really hard to either try to reconcile situations where I felt that was true, or leave them. Because in some cases, in order to preserve ourselves and our values, it's time to move on. I'm proud now, 5 years later, to be doing my own thing and to help companies figure this out, help them figure this out. But it's not a straight line, and it's not an easy path. But I do think acknowledging first and foremost that this is going to be uncomfortable. And this is not like the get comfortable being uncomfortable. This is not an Instagram quote. This is you're going to have to admit some hard things. You're going to have to admit that some of the practices and the procedures have been put in place to keep certain people safe and to keep them insulated and isolated. And if you really want to make change, you have to be brave. You have to be willing to say hard things out loud and then be accountable for them. And I see us taking steps, and I'm like in the background, like, yes, we can do it. We can do it. And then I see us getting stuck. Because it's hard. It is so hard to show up differently. All of our relationships change. And this is business, right? We've got stakeholders all over the place that we're accountable to, but I'm obviously here for it. I'm going to turn my own mic off and pass it on. But I do think it starts with those hard conversations and being willing to say out loud that you want change and that change will be hard.
Kelsey, I would love to hear from you on this one.
So I think to follow up to Meg's point is transparency. I would hate when I would go interview with a company and they tell me like, oh, we're going to do this, and we plan doing this. I go on the website and there's nothing. Like there's nothing talking about any of these initiatives, what's in place, and I've told them like, okay, other internships that I've applied to, they have programs that specifically target women, programs that target African Americans. What do you want to do? So I think that's really important throughout the hiring process. And as a person who was just a year ago, the one being interviewed about it, hold your ground, know what you want, and be yourself all the time. Like be who you are, be personable, be teachable. It's key.
Tony, anything else you have to add?
Transparency is huge. For millennials, it's very important. For Gen Z, it's absolutely non-negotiable. I want to see us push transparency to just massively higher levels, even to taboo things like pay transparency. The closer that we can get to real transparency, the better off that we'll be able to engage our people and to attract people.
Yeah. And the transparency piece is so incredibly important, but being real and being authentic with people is another piece of this. And I liken back to that discussion that we had on Monday evening, which I know all of you weren't there because you're all kind of scattered around the US, but the discussion that we had at Illinois State University with the students there, with Rashid Merritt, Vice President of Corporate Responsibility, so open, so honest that he knows this is hard work, and he completely 100% acknowledged it. And he said, you know what, we're going to get it right and we're going to get it wrong. But we have to keep trying. We cannot stop trying to get this right in our organizations. So I just so appreciated that. And it fed right into our conversation that we're having here today. So my next question for all of you is looking ahead, and I'll throw this, Kelsey, I want to hear from you first. Looking ahead, how do you think the insurance industry needs to evolve? What are the hard things we need to do to continue to attract and retain those talented employees that are out there like you?
Thanks, Heather. I think besides being open, evolving in that way that a lot of companies are really transparent and that other places should mimic that, I think new talent needs to be able, the thing that's going to be in demand the most is the ability to be analytical as far as a technological standpoint, because everything's evolving, AI, and like I said, I'm going into the underwriting position, and I feel like that's a role that's always going to need a human behind it. But we also need to be able to understand that in the future there might be a different pricing system or something in place that could do our job a bit faster. So just being aware of that and knowing when it's time to shift your skills.
Tony, what do you think?
You're absolutely right. And if you look at the research on the future of the underwriting, PwC has some great research on this. A couple of others have some great research on it. It all indicates underwriting moving away from my skill set, which is more relationship management, and becoming more and more analytic heavy. But there's a people business. The relationship piece will always be there. So for the companies, here's the super tricky part. The type of person that is really good on the analytic side is likely the type of person that is less good on the relationship side. So basically, we're aiming for a harder and harder to find person. So if that person doesn't exist in the wild, we kind of have to make them, right? So I think that the training programs need to evolve to get both types of people, to get really good analytics people and teaching them the communication skills, and people like me who are good at the relationship piece, and giving us the right tools to be able to handle the analytical piece that wouldn't be natural to us. So I think it's getting harder and harder to train good people for our industry.
Meg?
I just wanted to add a little bit of this is real. This real world just happened this week. I work with agents and I work with underwriters. So I asked a group of agents, hey, I'm headed to go meet a group of underwriters. What's one thing you'd like me to tell them? And the agents say, could you just pick up your phone? When I call you, could you just pick up your phone? And I'm like, yeah, true story. I'm an agent as well. I get it. Go talk to the underwriters. And I say, hey, what would you like to tell the agents? I cannot make this up. The underwriters say, I wish they would just email instead of calling me. Because we're on we need two completely different things out of that transaction. The agent is urgent. They need a yes or no. They need to move on. Everything's on fire. The underwriter has to document a file. They've got to make sure that they want time to process and answer correctly. And to your point, Tony, we're talking about two wildly different skill sets. And the demand on each of them continues to change as technology is woven through all of these. I started in the business as a trainee underwriter all those years ago, and analytics and predictive modeling and pricing guidance, none of that was present. When we talked about the art and the science of underwriting, we leaned much further into the art of it because we had so much more discretion because we didn't have all this data to support our decision-making. That's changed a lot. And those of us that are sort of in the middle of our careers have to remember that the good old days, if they were, I don't know that what's better or worse, but it's different. And we have to acknowledge that sort of longing for the way it used to be and lamenting what isn't anymore. It doesn't serve us going forward, and it doesn't help the generation that's coming in to think of ours as a progressive, forward-thinking organization, because we have to show them that as the people that are here. Not the website, not the banners and the blogs and the advertising. It's got to come from us. Yeah, Sharon, I see your comment in the chat. I couldn't have made it up. It was classic. I'm like, if we could solve this, I think the industry would be on a totally different trajectory.
Since we have a lot of students, a very quick advice for new underwriters or future underwriters. The agent or broker, they know you're new. They know you don't know everything. Responsiveness, like replying to the email right away, saying, I don't know, but I'll get you an answer within 24 hours. And then getting them the answer within 24 hours. That's number one thing that can really help you early on. And number two thing, spend time to understand their world, to understand, because we do radically different things. For underwriter, a big piece of your job is avoiding false positives, right? You don't want to pick up a piece of business that's going to have a huge loss. On the other side of the game, for the brokers and agents, their job is avoiding false negatives, is finding a home for that risk, right? So and it took me years to understand that. It was finally David Wright, the actuary, on a podcast episode that helped me understand that. You can get those two things: invest in understanding the agent's world and be responsive, and then actually get back to them as you said you would, and you're well on your way to solid broker relationships.
Yeah, and I think I have to throw this in here because all of you have just been hitting me with a bunch of darts here with what we need to do and how we need to evolve. We've got to get out of our own head and also get back to what the insurance industry purpose is. And we have to sell that story like you would not believe right now. We are an incredibly noble industry who does good things for the world. The world would not, business would not transact. Every single market out there would not be what it is if the insurance industry did not exist. And we're not very good at telling that story. And I think that's why the next generation looks at us and goes, I don't want to go sell insurance or sit in your call center for 10 years. They don't want that out of their lives and their careers. So we've got to get better at making sure everyone understands the true purpose of insurance and why we're here and why we show up in the world And all of us have a responsibility to make sure that story is told. So
helping your processing people, your call center people, like the more the entry level, very likely they are on a very, very, very thin piece of what we do, and they don't see the big picture. It'll take them years to see it. Help them understand that our mission is fantastic, and your little piece of it is crucial for our mission to work.
yeah, absolutely.
I'd like to add as well. I know Tony said like brokers and agents don't know. I'm telling you, students, trust me, they know. Like they know that we are new. They're very compassionate, and like you said, I try my best to respond to brokers fast because a lot of people know each other, and you don't want to get a bad reputation. So
Do the right thing. Like back up your words with action. Exactly what you just said there, Kelsey. Meg, you have something?
Yeah, I just and again, I sound like the old sage here with my decade. Like, oh, how did that? I don't know how that happened. It happened. Here we are. The people who will take my call today, any day and night, are those people, Kelsey, that you just described. The ones that I worked with 20 years ago when I knew nothing about insurance except I could get a paycheck every 2 weeks if I showed up to, like, I knew nothing. I invested in them and they invested in me. And when we talk about career journey, the opportunities that have presented, my very first client when I went out on my own 5 years ago was an agent that I worked with all those years ago. And there's a point, there's a departure in our career path where it's less about, I mentioned that underwriter 1, underwriter 2. It's more about, who are you? What do you stand for? What are you known for? Tony and I both talk personal brand. He's got a great presence out there on social media. I have built that as part of my business, but who at the end of the day you are and what you represent, I'll argue is more important than one more year of underwriting experience or one more turn at another carrier or another agency. When you're ready to make a move, it may be for a job that doesn't exist right now, but because you've built those relationships and established those connections that go all the way back to the beginning. And sometimes we're so close to it, we don't even realize what's happening, but people are noticing you, Kelsey, and they're noticing other people earlier in their career. And they're saying, ooh, this is somebody that I want to keep my eye on. And those relationships pay dividends in the long run. And you never know when, but they do. And that's one of the hardest things to bottle up and sell in our business, is that you can be highly employable for the entirety of your whole career in this business if you keep your options open and you build those relationships. It's really powerful.
Absolutely. Well, we have got a question on the fly here that just came to me. So, and Meg, I'm not going to let you answer this one first, mainly for a very specific reason. So, Tony, let me throw this to you first. What impact do you think the digital nomad work lifestyle desired by some people, how is that going to affect talent recruitment and retention in our industry?
Give your people the flexibility they want. Yes, early on into a new role or a new company, they're gonna want to be in person and they're gonna want to meet the coworkers. But beyond that, more and more you're gonna have demand for true flexibility. Two of us in this call are digital nomads. Now, Meg, much more experienced than me, and my plan is to be fairly rooted in Atlanta here again in 6 to 12 months. But yes, there is a portion, and I would say it's a significant portion of your of the next generation of professionals who really, really, really value that flexibility of being able to live where they want to live, right? Whether that's going back home to Iowa, or whether that's they've always dreamed of living in New York City, or at Goodwin, we have a few recruiters that are like living on a van, driving around the country kind of thing, and this is their second career, and they're having a blast doing that. I myself heading to South America for most of this year and probably part of next. It's a huge retention device for a portion of your people.
Kelsey, you have any thoughts on that?
I agree with Tony. I do, like, once I get more experience in my role and I have a established community of brokers I can reach out to and those who can reach out to me, I'm sure I'll be more comfortable. People at my job laugh at me because I come in on Fridays and no one's even here on Fridays, but it's just because I want to get a feel for what I'm doing. So
yeah. Yeah, and Meg, I call you the original digital nomad that I knew. So Meg took on that lifestyle a while back, and I know you probably are very key in tune with this particular subject. And how do you think it's going to affect talent recruitment and retention for us?
Okay, so I have thoughts about this, and I will not monopolize the conversation here, but I want to make a couple points. So a digital nomad, if it's a new term to anyone listening, I want to be inclusive here, is someone who does not have a home base, but travels and lives while they work. And I think if we learned anything we learned a lot post-pandemic, but not only did our work change, but many of us changed our relationship to work during the pandemic. And so I don't think that this is a conversation about the digital nomad life, which is very extreme. Just a little bit more than 2 years ago, I sold my condo in Chicago. All my stuff went to Goodwill or the consignment shop or the dumpster, and I hit the road. And I've been doing that in the US here for the last 2 years, building my business and continuing to grow my business while living in Airbnbs and in house sitting arrangements. And I'm a believer in indoor plumbing, Tony. So I will never, like, hashtag van life, never going to be my jam. But I do think the bigger picture is, or the bigger question here is, I talked about butts in seats before, and it's such a cliche thing to say, but our industry likes to see butts in seats. We always have. That's how we justify your existence, so to speak. It's how we account for the work that you're doing. And we've proven that so much of the work we do, because it's in our brains, it's thought work. It's done in the shower at 6 a.m. It's done for me at 3 a.m. when I can't fall back asleep. It's not done between the hours of 8 and 5. And so my lifestyle is very extreme, but I think a lot of us are rewriting this idea of where does work fit in our lives. And it isn't always between 8 and 5. That's a model that was built for a different time in our society, in our culture, in our progress as a country. And it doesn't relate necessarily in our business. I can't say that for other industries, but it's not always the best solution. And so the answer to me is, can you keep an open mind? We've not talked about those who require different work styles because they're neurodivergent, because they're on the spectrum, because they have an ADHD diagnosis. The work we're asking them to do in the container that we provide in the traditional environment doesn't always work for people. And so a good friend of mine just recently turned down a fantastic career opportunity because she couldn't get about 10% of flexibility from her new employer because she's got a tricky parenting situation. And that's the reality for lots of working women, is mothering as well, and caregiving at large as our population continues to age. And so having that flexibility and that understanding that not everybody wants to do what I did, but a whole lot of people need something that they're not getting currently. And can we stay curious? And instead of saying, no, that's not possible and that's not going to work, can we think creatively about what it might take to get there?
Remote friendliness is a DEI issue. We have to realize that the only demographic whose labor participation grew during COVID is people with disabilities and especially neurodiverse, right? So there's a huge population that we can really benefit from, both as an industry and as a society. And it is the right thing to do. And it's as simple as accommodating a little bit by doing things and just letting them work remotely.
Well, I know we are talking all today about how we're going to recruit and retain the next generation in insurance. And many of them are sitting over there at Illinois State University. If you could go ahead and throw our mic and spotlight over to our student group and Jim and Frankie over there. And I'd like to know if they have any questions at all for our panel.
I can get started. I feel like a lot of companies are so amazing and it's really hard to choose just one. Kelsey, what made you choose the company that you work for? Because I'm sure you had such amazing offers, and I feel like so many great companies come and speak to us and it's so hard to choose one. So I'm wondering how you made that decision.
So there were a few things that went into me deciding to stay with Munich. I did feel like I belonged here. I built a community throughout my rotation, throughout my internship, and then later coming back during my senior year. At Illinois State, I was an RA. I worked like 2 jobs. I'm sure you all know how hectic it gets. And even when I was doing all that while working part-time for them, they remained flexible for me. Not only that, but they have offices, New Jersey, Philly, New York, Chicago. I told them, I was like, I think I'd rather stay in Chicago for right now. This is what's best for me financially. My family's here. Nothing wrong with that. I also get the opportunity to travel, which is something that I've wanted to do for a while. So yeah, these rotational programs, I know Swiss Re has one as well. They're great for career development, and they also allow you to explore what you want to do within the industry. I had a peer in this program who started out on the underwriting track. Throughout our rotation, she realized like, oh, I actually want to be an actuary. Cool, that's not a problem. Let's switch it to the actuary track. I just like that amount of flexibility, and I love the people. So.
Any other questions from our student audience there?
I've already talked way too much, but can I reply to
Yeah.
Okay. Number one question that I get on chatwithtony.com, which is my pre-career advice service, from students, especially RMI students, is, do I go broker? Do I go underwriter? Like, how do I choose my first job, right? And I remember, like, I wasn't an RMI major, but I remember like getting my first job, and like, it's so natural to think I'm gonna be there forever. You're probably not gonna be there forever. So don't worry too much about it. Basically, if you make the wrong choice for your first job, chances are you'll learn a lot, and in a couple of years you make a move. And if you make the right choice for your first job, chances are you learn a lot, and after a couple of years you realize that you're suddenly worth a lot more in the market than how quickly the company can promote you. You might have to leave and come back to get paid what you're worth in the market. And money isn't everything, by the way. It really isn't. So don't worry too much about your first company. Like go through the process, interview with everybody, do internships, but ultimately, chances are you'll move around a little bit during your career. So don't worry too much about your first job.
Thank you. I feel like a lot of students, we are worried about that. We want to make sure we pick the right choice, and it can be scary too if we don't think that we are going to pick the right choice. So thank you so much for that input.
Heather, can I add a little? I can't help myself.
No, absolutely, Meg. Go ahead.
This is like the sociologist in me coming out, and on a very personal note, I got married right out of college. I was very young. I was divorced at 30. When I think about career and where career fits, I just want to remind us all that we're living our personal lives and journeys while we're building our careers. And you're going to experience some wild highs and some wild lows in your life. And that's not a curse. It's just the reality of living. And there will be times when your career is pedal to the metal and it's all systems go and you are living the dream. And there's going to be times when that career has to sit in the back seat because that's all that you can give it in that moment. And giving yourself the grace to say, you know what, for the next couple of years, I need to phone it in because I've got something else that's a higher priority to me right now. Right now, it's what you know, right? You've been going to school for 4 years. You're on, it's all about, everybody's asking you right now, aren't they? What are you going to do after graduation? They started asking you when you were a sophomore. They started asking you in 8th grade. Like, that's the world we live in right now. But please remember that you are whole, complicated, messy, beautiful people that will evolve and iterate over and over and over again throughout your lives and your careers. And how that all looks, I mean, would we want to know? I don't know. I'm kind of loving the not knowing, frankly. I've found the greatest peace in the leaning into the uncertainty and the discomfort, but that's not true for everyone. The irony of all of this, and I can't help myself, we are risk management professionals, but we don't always think about our own relationship with risk taking. And like, just for fun, layer the risk management principles on top of your decision making. What would you do? Would you avoid it? Would you lean into it? Would you pass it off to someone else? I mean, this is what we do for a living. And you've got this great tool as risk professionals right here at your fingertips that you can be using in your decision-making process. So rant off.
And this comment in the chat is radically important. And I don't know if the students can read it since we're on a big screen, not on their individual screens. But she said, exploit your natural skills and abilities and unique talents. Chances are there is a place in the insurance industry that can use them. Two, just super wise things there. Number one, know thyself, and don't do what Tony did early on and chase jobs that pay well, but that are not a good aptitude fit for you. In my case, I took a detour into more analytical jobs and failed horribly at it because I wasn't following my strengths. Number two, truly, we have a place here for every skill set, every type of person. Chances are eventually with the right advice, you'll find a place that's just a great fit for you within the industry.
Wow. Okay, I cannot believe our time is up. This is crazy. And I will say, there's so much that was talked about today that is so crucial to the future of insurance talent. And I hope that just one thing that was said today really resonated with you. But I will say, in the infamous words of Ted Lasso, I feel like we all fell out of the lucky tree and hit every branch on the way down, ended up in a pool of cash and Sour Patch Kids today. All right, because this was incredible. This was such a good discussion about what it is that we need to do, how we need to evolve, who we need to be, and how we need to show up in the insurance industry today. And I think absolutely every one of these incredible, we're not supposed to use that word anymore, rock stars, because of some NFL commercial now. Can't use the word rock stars, right? But you are all absolute rock stars in the insurance industry, and we so appreciate your discussion today. Craig, I think we're taking ourselves out to a break right now, aren't we?
Yes, that's correct. And coming up,